Welcome to We're Not Wizards. We are the best, but not wizards. Enjoy the show!
Hello and welcome to another episode of We're Not Wizards. My name's Richard. I'll be your host for March. Now, as they traditionally say, March either comes in like a lamb and goes out like a lion, or comes in like a lion and goes out like a lamb, and that is in reflection to the weather. It's either really, really nice at the beginning of March and then it ends up horrible and you get snow, or it's slightly cold at the beginning of the March and it ends up kind of nice and sunny and lovely and wonderful. And amazing, almost sunny, probably sunny enough to get yourself your bag of clubs, get yourself on the fairway and get yourself back out kind of playing yourself some golf. Now, obviously, as soon as the weather clears up, there's going to be a rush, there's going to be a race, there's going to be a chase. People are going to be jumping into cars left, right and centre, just trying to get to the golf course to get on the first tee to beat everybody else. I think if you're going to be discussing golf and if you're going to be discussing car chases, there's only one person that you can discuss. And I'm not just talking about him for his games. I'm going to be talking about him for his theory and his numbers and potentially his Excel spreadsheet. So we're going to be talking a little bit about Rolling One, and we're going to be talking potentially a little bit about Gunnet, and we are definitely going to be talking to Randy O'Connor from RandyOGames. Hello there.
Hello. It's nice to talk with you.
Not that it's like not that we've not just been having like a conversation.
Yeah,
for
no,
like
we've
the last
definitely
kind of like 20 minutes and kind of went, let's stop and let's actually kind of start. And
we first started talking because you had recorded a podcast where you were asking about like numbers, right? Yeah. You kind of got the sense that you don't always. A lot of people don't know specific numbers, and I'm actually from the video game side of things, and then I started making board games because my eyesight was going bad from like staring at a screen too long. But then, of course, inevitably you get drawn back into it. Yeah. Because you have to like do the art, and generally you're going to do that on a computer, or do the spreadsheets or whatever. I kickstarted a game a few years ago called Rolling One. It's a dice golfing game where it's the 6 polyhedral dice. Each one, it kind of represents a different golf club. Yeah, that was the prompt. That was essentially the inspiration, and I knew there was a good game in there, and it took me a long time to figure out what that game was. So there were like a bunch of like mechanical things that I like assumed would be good off the start, and they were not good. And then it's just, you come back to it. But the numbers, the things that like popped out to me was just how different the manufacturing experiences on tabletop than video games, or like the production side. Like, so yeah, I'm giving you way too much and dense a peek immediately, but it was like, I was always kind of surprised that board game industry and video game industry, like they just felt so different, right? It was like they never communicated, and I was like, game designers are the same thing, right? And then in the production of Rollin' One, it was like, oh, this is just a completely different production process. Yes. And so even though the gamers, even though there's plenty of people who play on both sides of things, although I think the crossover is, I think people trend one way or the other. As soon as you like look at the production side, you're like, oh, this is just like a whole different ballgame. So
what I think, and I've spoken to quite a few people who have been flipped from one side to the other, who started off in video games and went to board games. And I think one of the things that came clear throughout it is that in terms of the production of a video game and in terms of the production of a tabletop game, they approach things from two different kind of angles. In that, I can basically take like a deck of 52 cards, have some stickers, have a couple of dice, and I can write values in felt tip pen on the cards, and essentially have like a working kind of game that gives me kind of the experience, even though it kind of looks like, you know, it looks like a mess. Whereas on video games, it seems to be the case that it can take a while before you get to the kind of the final product, and that it seems like the money in the production goes in different places. When it's video games, it's like the production money is all about producing all of the kind of the producing. It's kind of similar, but you're doing all the programming, all the fault finding, all the testing, all the animations, all the physics and stuff like that. Whereas for tabletop, and then at the end of the video game process, it's a case of, well, you're pressing a button and you're just releasing the beta code or the gold disc. Whereas on tabletop, you can have kind of like, you can sit down with all this card, all this paper, and actually have a fully functioning working copy, do your clip art and stuff like that, and have it kind of up and running. But the expense doesn't come until you say, right, I want to change this into something that looks beautiful. I want to get the artwork done, which kind of then costs money to kind of get all that done and kind of get it up and running and stuff like that, which I thought was the kind of the main difference between the two.
Well, and I think it's why we've seen Kickstarter, like, video games don't really exist on Kickstarter in the same meaningful way, you know, whereas board games still kind of thrive in the Kickstarter and crowdfunding space.
Yeah, it's kind of strange. It's like the biggest... I always hear the biggest failure rate for Kickstarter seems to be video games. I mean, they seem... you know...
It's because the implementation is everything. And so it's like if I ask you for a bunch of money at the start of a video game, what happens if, like, I discover that, like, this one feature isn't working quite right? And now you as the purchaser might be getting a different game, right? It's like there's still an entire, like, you're still kind of asking, you're basically putting a lot of faith in an idea.
Yeah.
Like in a video game, early on. Whereas a board game, you're kind of like, I just need, like, I actually have all the pieces here, right? Like, I just need someone to, like, I need a factory, right? Like, and that's, it's a kind of fascinating process. So, like, getting into some of those numbers, it's funny learning how cheap the actual product is. You know, if you go through a standard factory, you know, it's like many games are being produced for, like, I don't know, $2, maybe $5 or something. Like, the actual, like, per unit cost is not that much, but that's because they're making 1,000 of them, and then it's going to be, $1,500 to get it across the ocean. Also, you're adding like $200 to a guy who's going to manage who's going to fill out the customs paperwork. Now, you could do that yourself for like $30.
Yes.
However, you have no idea what boxes you're supposed to check. So you give the guy $200 because it's going to save you a whole lot of knowledge and headache. But that's, it's like you add those things up, and then it's like, oh, well, it has to get... So with Roll-in-One, like, to get into it, right? Like, that's, and what I'm planning for Gunit, I'm planning to go with the same manufacturer. I worked with a company called Longpack. They gave me good quotes. They were good at communication. And, like, both of those things combined to be like, done, right?
Yeah.
Someone has a reasonable quote and they communicate well.
That's what you
right?
want. Yeah,
like,
win-win.
That's what you want. And, like, also the reviews were, like, you look at the games they've worked on, and, I think are they King Domino? They might have done King Domino, but they did Blue Planet. They've done plenty of things that I was like, oh, I've seen that in a shop, and it's a nice production.
Exactly.
So it was kind of like what I think a lot of people, and myself included, weren't really aware of is you could just, like, reach out to any of these people and give them an item list, because they don't, they're just like, okay, how many cards do you have? What are the size of your cards?
Yeah.
If your cards are like a standard poker or tarot size, it's going to be a little cheaper than if your cards are a slightly different size.
Yeah.
And so, like, do you want to save like 12 more cents, by just using a tarot instead of your slightly different size? And of course, I'm like, yes, like happily, I will like adjust these card sizes to fit a more standard size. I didn't even think about that, when I was making them. I was just like open Photoshop and I'm like, here's my card. And, and then I shared, and they're like, this is close to a poker size. It'll cost you more to use your unique size. I'm like, I can adjust the art. So.
But in fact, when you get through the production, when they actually go through the production process, the first run that they give you, they usually send you is the white run, they call it. It's basically your game with no art on it, just all the components and kind of like just blank. You get blank cards, you get the blank inlays, you get the blank box, just so you can see how everything kind of looks together.
Yeah, right.
Rolling back on Rolling One, I intended that pun entirely, but in terms of things like the advertising and stuff like that, because that is the kind of, it's kind of like the hidden art. And what I mean is it's kind of like the hidden cost. And there's a game that's on Kickstarter just now, which I'm going to mention by name, called Flow, FLOE.
Okay. Oh yeah, I've seen it. I'm certainly watching Kickstarter right now because I'm about to kickstart a new game. Gunit.gg. If you stop listening to this podcast in 20 minutes when I say the link again.
No, they won't. They'll stay. I'll make them stay. I usually stay.
Yeah.
But Flow seems
What
to
about
be. It seems to be kind of everywhere. I mean, there's like multiple kind of. There's multiple kind of adverts for it. There's multiple kind of. I see it kind of mentioned everywhere. I see it kind of on Facebook when Facebook is working. I see it on various different kind of places, and they must have spent an absolute fortune on the marketing. You've also then got your previewers. You've got your preview. I call them previewers because it's not a final copy that they're looking at, so they're previewing kind of like the version of the game. And a lot of those previewers use it as a reason to be charging for services. So when it came to Rolling One, was there upfront costs that you had to take care of before you could even think about the kind of the manufacturing side of things?
Oh yeah, I mean, I don't think board games are a profitable space. I only was able to I was only able to make Rolling One happen because I had a well-paying contract at the time.
Right. Okay.
So I was spending about 2/3 of my time working as a game designer. I was leading a web and digital and mobile game space that was making programming games, like games to teach programming concepts to like high schoolers.
Oh, right. Okay.
And it was a lot of fun. It's called Terminal 2. It's still around. And yeah, basically Rolling One I was working on at the time, I was saving up my money so that I could spend what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Like it cost me, first you have to have good art, right? Like right off the bat, you need to have some aesthetics, right, that people can be attracted to. And I'm a good artist, but I also knew what I wasn't capable of. I'm not a character artist. Yeah. So I found an artist, paid Thomas Ketchen, $150, I think, per character. Yeah. And he would just do, and I love them. I paid him a few $100s for sketches. Yeah. So it was like $200 just like sketch me a bunch of like Zootopia like characters that are going to be golfers. Yeah. And so right off the bat, a couple $100, and then it was like, okay, I like these ones. I like this one. Can we make this one, a woman instead of a man? Can we make this one younger? Yeah. And then I want to say it was $150 per character. And then the final box art. Now I'm going to I'm looking at these and I'm like, these are just the invoice totals. So I don't actually know per thing, but the start sketches for the box were like $350.
Wow.
And then but I knew, I was willing to pay. I wanted him to make cool stuff. And the second payment for the box art, so I paid him another $850 for box art and a couple characters, and then a couple new characters for Kickstarter exclusives, plus I think 4 more characters was another $900. So yeah, I paid him a few $1,000s, maybe $2,500 or something.
But in fairness, it kind of adds that extra character to the game. Because if I look at the components on the game, it's like it was a hex grid type game, and I think if you had traditional golfers on it, it might have it possibly might have had less eyes on it than it kind of did. Were you doing kind of like, did you have to kind of like get a lot of prototypes made for kind of previews? Did you approach kind of like, because I see you've got stuff for like Roll-in One, so did you also kind of get any kind of previews done for the game at the time?
Yeah, so this was independent of the manufacturer, but I wanted custom dice. So like, to explain a little bit more about how Roll-in One works, come back to the mechanics. The story here is that I had the polyhedral idea, right? The putter, a 4D is the putter, right? A D20 is a driver. And my thought was, the premise is not, I roll a 20 and I move 20 spaces. The actual idea that I came up with was, if you roll a 5 on the D20, you move forward 1 space. And now you must roll that die, that is your golf club, and each time you beat the previous number, you move forward again.
Right, okay. So it's a push your luck.
So if you roll like a 4, it's not even a push your luck. You're just choosing the die, and you actually can't choose to stop. So that's part of the fun of it, right? Is like, if I roll a D20, I'm probably going to go far because I can't choose to stop. And so it's like, I rolled a 5, so I move forward a space. I roll an 8, I move forward again. I rolled a 6. Now, womp, and I tell people it's like how I play golf. It's not a professional golf thing. It's Zootopia golf. It's me and my dad playing golf. Like, he plays better golf than I do. But we go out like every 6-9 months or something like that to play. And it goes where I want 50% of the time. That was the inspiration, but it doesn't work that way. It turns out, my wife is a data scientist, and I came home with the idea. It was like I was at a board game playtest night. I was actually kind of inspired by this friend, Ben Moy. He had his own kind of golf game. And I was like, okay, I have this idea. I come home, it's 11:30 at night. Emily is... I think she's playing Breath of the Wild and just getting ready to go to bed. And I'm just like, I have this brilliant idea. And then I'm gonna make her play this, and she's like, she's fine with board games. She likes them, doesn't.
Yeah, not 11:30 at night liking them though.
Yeah. And so then, I'm like, all right, here's what we're gonna do: choose the D20 or choose the D10 or whatever. And she's like, that's not gonna work. And I was like, what do you mean? And she's like, well, statistically with the D20, you are as likely to roll a 20 as a 1. So it doesn't matter that it has more sides. You're probably not going to go far. And it turns out you can find the math on it. No matter the number of sides, a die is likely to fail within 2.7 rolls.
Wow.
So or that's basically, that's the limit. So on the math side, right? With a D4, it is going to fail sooner than that, but quickly the number of sides matters less than just the numbers on it. So all of this is me doing a long way to come back to, this required custom sides. So the actual way the game works is there are different sides of the dice. Some of them, if you just roll them, you move forward no matter what, which means that there's the numbers are still the way I explained it, but the percentage of sides that are numbers is different depending on the die.
Ah, right, okay.
So by changing the percentage of sides that are numbers, I can actually change the probabilities, the broad probabilities of the distance of each dice.
So in some of the dice have got the little kind of green triangles, which I'm assuming just means you're going to kind of you're going to be advancing no matter kind of what. Okay.
So the driver has like half of the sides are that. So it means you will always have a 50% chance with the D20 of rolling a triangle and going forward. Unless you're in trees, because then there's also a bunch of terrain. There's a bunch of, like additional aspects to it. There's other sides. You also can't choose to change direction. There's a left and right, or there's a curve symbol, and you can only change direction, and you must change direction if you roll that. We could talk about this a lot. I should probably. I'm really bad at promoting myself. The fact that I've been working on a new game for 2 years. But let's talk about more of the numbers, because I'm really bad at this.
Well, I mean, did you?
But hopefully this is interesting.
Did you end up paying for kind of preview stuff?
A minimal amount, and probably coming back into Gunit, it's the same thing where I wish I had more. Like, often the design comes in kind of close to the Kickstarter, and like getting preview copies is expensive.
Yes.
So I believe for that one I used Board Games Maker. There's like a company that does printed dice.
Yeah.
So there are different there are companies that will print dice for you. So let me look at what I did. Yeah, Board Games Maker. They will print dice for you. But I also knew that, like, for an actual production copy, you don't want printed dice, right? You want, like...
You want dice.
You want it etched,
yeah,
right? You want it etched in the dice.
Yeah.
So it was that was definitely, like, a necessary thing. Amusingly enough, the actual, the manufacturing side, I think that only cost $50 to $100 to get the mold for any die made. So, like, add that to the, each of the dice, I had to pay the manufacturer for that. But before that, I just got white dice printed with, simple black symbols.
Yeah.
I think I got 2 or 3 of those made, and I sent them out to a few different people, just like a couple small YouTube channels. Because if you want to talk to, one of the big channels, a preview of the game is going to be anywhere from like $400 to $900, for them, and that's on top of like everything else that's required, and then also you need to do it 2 to 3. You need to line those things up.
You need like 2 or 3 months. It's usually kind of like a 6 month lead time, and then you need to be able to kind of pass everything round.
Right.
There's a game. Right. There's a game on Kickstarter launched today, which is the March 5th. Because I keep looking at the download figures in terms of territory, and it's always American. And if I say the 5th of March, you American folk are going to go, what did he just say? Did he say the 5th of March? Do you not mean March 5th? So it's March 5th. But it's fled. And it's by the same guy. It's Mark Swanson, the same boy that made Feudum, Oddbird Games, and I was lucky enough to kind of do a preview of that game. But I had it. I had it like 6 months ago, like literally 6 or 7 months ago, and it was just like passing it about. And can you send it to this person? Can you send it to this person? Can you send it to this person? And that's how kind of how it worked. I take it in terms of previews, you're always expecting... Do you expect when people are previewing a game, do you just want them to come up with all the positive marketing, brilliant stuff? Or do you mind if somebody comes and says, I would have liked to seen this, I would have liked to seen that, if they're a little bit critical?
Personally, I would like to see the latter. For, like, in terms of sales, I've seen some like really good points. So like 70% of my knowledge is from Jamie Stegmaier. So that is, I will say, it's like we talked earlier about like transient, like YouTube Shorts and all that short form stuff. I love the Stonemeyer website because he has in immense detail, right, documented the costs, the like contracts, all these different things. And one of the things he's been kind of like, I appreciate the like idea that if I'm paying for someone, this is a sales thing, right?
Yes.
If I am paying for a preview, this is a sales pitch. Like I'm spending money so I can hopefully make money. If I am sending you something for free, I'm actually pretty open to whatever, because I think like I believe that you get a fan by being honest. I think you get fans of your work by being honest and open and interesting, like as a YouTuber, as a, Instagrammer, as a designer, right? Like trying to create a thing. And I love when previewers do that, and it's painful, or reviewers do that, but I would much rather like hear the hard stuff, right? It's something that I experience when I'm playtesting, is like I tell people, if you tell me something, I know 100 more people out there are gonna say the same thing when I'm not around.
Yeah, exactly. They're just being polite.
Yeah.
And then, but the other way I look at it is, if somebody sends me a preview, I am talking to the people who are potentially going to back it, whether or not they think it's kind of like, if there's stuff that instantly I go, this is cool. But I'm also quite happy to go stuff that is instantly I'm kind of like, I'm not kind of cool with this. This doesn't work for me. But personally, I would have liked to seen X, Y, Z. It's very rare that I'll kind of go off and say, like, this is just a collection of ideas that doesn't work. I've done it recently, and a game just didn't gel with me, and I just went, I'm not sure where this game is meant to be going or what it's meant to be doing, and it's not I just didn't enjoy it. But there are people out there that did enjoy it. But I guess on the other side, if it was a Kickstarter game, and if you look at the Kickstarter, the kind of from a couple of years ago, the number of people that are going, this is the best game ever, and I'm just like, how? It's just like, what were you not seeing?
Well, I respond negatively to the kind of like ever like words, like this is best ever, or this is I'm the happy, like, because I feel like, I don't know if we're still in that phase, but you'll sometimes get like a link, or you see, like someone will share a video, this is the funniest thing ever. I'm like,
no,
I get very annoyed with that. Like, and I don't want people to say that, right? It's not the funniest thing ever. It's really funny.
It's funny.
Like it's funny.
But
and
only a Sith deals in absolutes, though. If I find that kind of stuff out, we're going to have words, and I'm bringing my lightsaber.
Right. Well, and it's like, even the best thing, you can still like find something that doesn't quite work for you, right? Or even the worst thing, you can often like find something of meaning, or you can find like, oh, mechanically there's something here, or thematically there's something here. And like I got a degree in animation, so 3D animation. Wow. And part of the training there was critique, and a critique was all about like, I love here's a thing I like, and here's a thing I think could be improved. It's like, and so I'm happy when previewers or reviewers or anyone like does that, because I doubt you think universally that this is like the best thing ever. So until the next
game that they preview comes up.
Right.
Did I?
Well, I mean,
they don't kind of go back and say I've changed my mind now. But it's fine. I mean, there's an industry there, and it's all good. But
it's hard.
Yeah, it's part of it, and it's something that you can either kind of rally against it forever, or you can just accept that it's part of the thing that happens, and it happens in movies, and it happens in music, and it happens in everywhere else, that there are people who are part of the great big marketing machine who are there to make things kind of make people aware of things that are out there. Otherwise, more games and more movies and more videos and more stuff kind of probably wouldn't kind of get created. Though it depends, because I see as a quick aside, with you being involved in the video game space, and we're talking about money and figures, is, and you don't have to either and you can nod or shake your head because I don't want to get you kind of on the record, but is Sony making $3 billion last year and then shutting down and losing 900 members of staff the biggest load of bullshit going? Don't have to answer that because I thought you can nod or shake your head. He's not kind of sure. Right, okay. I get it.
Well, okay. I'll give you my like 20-second
thing,
which
that's
I
fine.
think anyone can know about, which is just like tech and games and everyone just way overexpanded and foolishly like did not consider that the pandemic was like not a forever thing.
Yeah.
That's the to me that's the long and short of the real bad stuff that's been happening over the last years is that companies, I think foolishly, they just overhired. They made a lot of stupid mistakes. I think also we can see, okay, yeah. Now here's my like 45 more second break into video games.
Yeah.
And I've been thinking about this a lot. So for anyone who's interested about games, the video games like business and discoverability and kind of like platforms and things, not mobile, he doesn't really focus there, but there's a guy, Simon Carless. He has a Substack and a website called Game Discover Co.
Okay.
It's great. He comes out with like two a week, and it's all basically about how people find your game.
Wow.
And it's all about finding video games, and it's basically like, hey, should you put your game on discount your game more on Steam? And it's like, the answer is yes. You should discount your game on Steam because there's algorithmic reasons.
Yeah.
There's like wish lists. There's like, it triggers certain emails.
Yes.
It's like there's all these things. But then he'll go into like, okay, well there's that. Then okay, Xbox and they have Game Pass, right? And they're like, Microsoft went the subscription route. Right. So broadly, I this is a super reduction of everything, but it's like Microsoft kind of went the subscription route and said, we don't care what platform you play on. Like Minecraft is making us billions. It's like bonkers.
Yeah.
And I wonder if they only do this strategy because they bought Minecraft, right? They bought Minecraft and it was already everywhere. Right. And so then they were like, well, we have this. Our behemoth is making so much money, and guess what? It's both on our platform and not on our platform.
Yeah, but
right.
Yeah,
and so then they start to sell like subscriptions. Sony was like, no, come to us for the hardware, right? Like, come to us for the best freaking hardware that you're gonna have next to your TV. And the fact is that most people like just want to play Fortnite. It's like that we have turned into like each game is now it's a culture, right? It's like Fortnite you can exist on. And I think all of these massive companies are confronting the fact that like the technology is now allowing individual games to be 80% of a kid's a video game attention span.
I mean, if you think about it, the whole Minecraft thing for Microsoft is completely following Microsoft's business model. Because Microsoft's business model isn't, we're going to specialize in this and draw everybody to us. Microsoft's entire business is founded on the fact that you would go on, switch a PC on, and there was a version of Windows there. And all that they've done is they've moved this philosophy onto Minecraft, is to basically say, well, look, it's cheap. It's like to get like a copy of Minecraft, you can download it for free, but you can also pay like a license fee, which is like, it's £15, it's about $12, yeah? My son's got it, and considering the price of video games, when a new video game's like 60, 70, 80, I mean, I've been looking at the PlayStation Store recently, and there's been games there like, this latest UFC thing, it was like the Premier Deluxe version was £109. It was about $120 or something. And I'm just like, that's ridiculous. But then on the other side of it, I'm looking at Minecraft, and if you want to get like a Minecraft pack with skins and stuff like that, it's about $15. It's cost nothing, which means that's why it spreads everywhere. I think, and if you're looking at PlayStation are right. PlayStation 1 exclusives, they've always worked on the fact that they're so inbred in the console war thing that's why they're searching for exclusives and fighting for exclusives and stuff like that. But somebody said the other day that I think something like, if you look back to the number of exclusives that they had, they had a joke that actually the Dreamcast in its lifetime has had more exclusives than the Sony PlayStation 5 or something like that over the last kind of couple of years.
Well, the development time now,
you know,
right?
Yeah.
You know, it's like one of these things costs hundreds of millions of dollars to produce, like a Spider-Man 2. And yeah, I mean, we're in a different space, right? Like Minecraft was made by one person, right? And then, you know, and that was and now obviously it's worked on by plenty of people, right? But it was like him and a composer, and then it was like, oh, you got a business guy, and it was like the tools and the foundations exist now to make games and the entire like meta structures around them, and the ability for anyone around the world and like hundreds of people to come into the same game. Like all of that technology is there, and now Sony's like, oh, by the way, you know, it's gonna, like, we're doing these massive like first party titles, and it's an interesting space to be in, because the underlying connectivity we have right now, I think, has just changed what we think of as video games. Like it's a different cultural thing, in my opinion. It feels more akin to playing football than it does sometimes to playing like Quake.
Rolling back to what you were saying about Fortnite, my son lives in two places. One of them is Minecraft, one of them is Fortnite, and one of them is currently watching The Last Airbender again after watching the live action TV show. But Fortnite is literally, and this was 3-4 months ago now, and he says, you've got to come. He was in his room. He says, you've got to try this. It was actually 3 months, Christmas time. You got to try this. He calls me upstairs and he says, look at this. This is amazing. And he's basically playing Guitar Hero in Fortnite. I mean, that's what he's playing.
They bought harmonics.
He's playing Rock Band on Fortnite.
They bought the Rock Band.
You know, and I'm just like going, oh my,
yeah.
I'm like going, this is and you know, part of me was just like, okay, some of the stuff that Epic have done in terms of, like, say, Among Us, I didn't like the fact that all of a sudden they decided to lift Among Us and just dump it in Fortnite and kind of make it imposters or whatever. And that was just like, oh, well, that's a bit bad. But then they seem to have kind of almost matured and said, right, okay, I can now go and knock on Lego's front door and say, hi, Lego, we're Epic Games. You might know us from Fortnite. And it's almost become the case that if you're wanting to grab the zeitgeist, if you're wanting to engage in a certain demographic, you want to get your stuff on Fortnite. What's coming out next week on Fortnite? There's Last Airbender avatars. Why have they got Last Airbender avatars? Is it because, you know, Fortnite have been asking kind of Nickelodeon for ages? It's like, no, because on Netflix just now they've just released a live action kind of first series of Avatar: The Last Airbender. So what better to kind of get all these kids watching this live action show than actually having them being able to play as the character in the video games? Absolutely, just a complete different way of kind of marketing. Plus all the Lego stuff. The Lego stuff is just, I mean, Microsoft must have been a bit kind of like, this is scary because this is Minecraft. What they're doing, what they're trying to do is, I know it's not Minecraft, but it's damn close to and we're going to see them in the corridor at lunchtime, and we're going to give them a sly nod and say, we know what you're doing, and they know what they're doing, and we know that you know that we know that you're doing, but you know, so that kind of thing. We are gonna move. We're just like, you know, we're just jumping back and forward like frogs and it's all good. It's all good. Okay, so I'm reading between the lines, right? Sure. It sounds to me that Roland 1 didn't it's the Terry Pratchett masquerade thing. It's like, you know, all that you did is you put money into this and you got like a board game. You didn't actually make any money off the back of Roll One, really.
Small amount, I would say at this point. Yeah, I was, not really.
Yeah.
so I raised about 32 grand.
Yeah.
You figure like 8% of that I think went to Kickstarter.
Yeah, something like that.
So, you know, they take their cut. Then there's like Stripe takes their cut, or, you know, so right off the bat you have to like account for that stuff in there. The molds, like, so there's little golf ball tokens.
Yeah.
Those molds were $3,000. Just like for the manufacturer, because they make an aluminum mold or whatever.
Yeah.
I think it's aluminum, so they could print 1 million of these if I wanted, right? But that was like a third of my manufacturing costs, was just these little like golf ball tokens. I'm gonna I have here's the game.
Yay!
It's
a lovely looking game. We're not recording video.
Thank you. Okay. But yeah, these. Here's we're not recording, but
so
you can see
They're
them.
Amazing. It's like little Epcot centers.
Yeah.
No, it's like
I will never not think that now.
It's like everybody's gonna look at that and go, it's like Epcot centers on your game. Does Disney know about this?
So
you better watch it.
You're gonna
get like a cease and desist.
Hopefully not. I think it's so I mean, I think it ended up being about $4 per unit.
Wow.
Then there's a whole thing that was excluding the tooling cost. So tooling is the cost to make that mold.
Yeah.
So there was tooling cost for that, and then like $50 to $100 per die to get those custom made. And then, you know, like they'd send me one copy, and then I think I paid for a second preview copy because there were a couple like components that I, you know, wanted an iteration on. They were really good with like kind of pushing back and checking the state of art and being, you know, it was like they weren't going to print something. They were very good about that. You know, there was a plastic insert. There's all these little things. It adds up to about $4 I think per copy. And then you get to what's known as the landed cost. So that's the manufacturing cost. The landed cost is the total of manufacturing plus all the shipping, freight, customs, logistics to get it to the warehouse where the copies are going to be in their like final state or continent. The landed cost for the game was between $8 and $9. Yeah. Because, you know, it's a few $1,000s there. And then that kind of goes, so then it's now in the warehouse, you're now at $8 or $9 a unit, and you're selling it, I was selling it for $25. You're supposed to, like they say, you should actually be selling at 4 to 5x your landed cost.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is so you can afford the next print run, right? Like that's really the intent, is like, if you don't charge enough, you're going to basically have paid your bills, and then you don't have enough money.
You don't have an ongoing kind of war chest to then spend it. With you knowing all the cost and the landed costs and everything like that, are you ever tempted to send emails to, like, say, Simon or Awaken Realms or Mantic Games or any of these big, huge Steamforge boys and just say, what are you doing? Are you absolutely insane? Because you must be, with the knowledge that you must have now, you must be like, this is costing, you know, I know that they've raised kind of like $750,000 here, but instantly with what I can see here and what they're intending to do, there's quite easily half of that is just gone in manufacturing. There's kind of no way they're going to be able to.
Sure. Well, and that's why like scale matters, right? So like printing like 2,000 here. All right. So I can give you a little more details here.
Spreadsheet.
Yeah. So
is there any lilac on the spreadsheet at all? Did you use the color lilac at all?
Oh, I love colors. I don't know if lilac is in there.
Such a disappointment.
This podcast is over.
This is like goodbye.
So I got 5 different quotes from them.
Yeah.
Four different quotes over the course of about 6 months, from like the initial quote to the final. And then so the cost per unit, here you go. For 2,000 units, this is like the final one when I was like actually paying them. It was, if I wanted 2,000, it was going to be $4.13. If I wanted 2,750, 2,750, it would have been $3.91.
Wow.
So that's 22 cents difference for less than 1,000 units difference. So you can imagine if I ordered 10,000 copies, now I might be down to like low $3 instead of low $4. And that's kind of where the difference, really factors in, and that, like, yeah, it really starts to make, and also like if I ever go back to Longpack and say I want to make more Roll-in-One, I don't have to pay that $3,000 for that dice token again, or that golf token. So suddenly that makes my life, way cheaper. The expansion packs, so like, the entirety of the game, $4.13. The expansion pack is 2 tarot cards and 8 half-size poker cards. Yeah. That was 77 cents.
Wow.
For 10 cards, because I only ordered 750.
Right, okay.
And so because they, Longpack and a lot of manufacturers have kind of a minimum of like 1,500 units usually was what I encountered. Yeah. Was kind of the standard minimum order. But they would offer like, an expansion pack, yes. We will do like a half order of that.
Yeah. Because I guess it's just like extra. It's always going to be extra money, and also means the machines are working, which is better than when the machines aren't. When the machines kind of aren't working.
Exactly. Yeah. They've printed that thing. It's sitting in a box somewhere, right?
So moving into Gunit.
Yeah.
And I'll think of an incredible segue, but I can't think of something just now. I mean, hopefully you've left the engine running so I can just jump in and we could just make it work. But is there lessons then you've learned from Gunit that you're then has decided or has, I guess, made you make certain changes on the game itself? I notice that, for instance, there seems to be a little bit of a less of a lack of actual physical components, and it seems to be a much more kind of card based game. So
this is actually a bad idea.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is actually a bad thing I'm doing.
Okay.
Because this is the flip side of this is that components are how you sell Kickstarters. So when I mentioned that like Jamie Stegmaier is where I learned like 70% of my knowledge. Yes. The other knowledge I would attribute to Andrew Nerger from Road to Infamy. Like they make Canvas. And a bunch of other awesome games. Andrew and I were living in Chicago. I think he's still there. I'm now in California. I basically, during the pandemic, once a week was just having an hour-long call with him. Because he was just like, because we were in the game design scene together. And he was just giving, and I would just be like, what the heck do I do? What the hell do I, and they are successful at Kickstarter. They know how Kickstarter works. Yeah. And I also knew through them, Ken Gruel.
No.
So Ken Gruel made Happy Salmon, and one of the things that they taught me was just like, you need something unique that makes your Kickstarter like pop, that someone says that's a product to purchase. And the golf ball tokens and the custom dice and all those like multi-hex tiles, that is like that's a product, right? That doesn't exist. I can't just get that made through the Game Crafter, right? Like it is like, no, I need to go to a manufacturer. I need to get something made at scale. Gunit, the thing I didn't learn, Gunit and Roll-in-One were actually started around the same time, like in design phases. Gunit just is a more it's a more complicated game. It required a lot more subtlety of balance and exactly the features of it.
Yeah.
And so I basically was choosing, and I was like, I know the boundaries of Roll-in-One. I can finish this one in the next year. I don't know the boundaries of Gun It yet. So I'm going to focus on Roll-in-One, and when I'm done with that, then I'm going to return to Gun It. So Gun It is So Gun It, for anyone who doesn't know, which is probably most people, which is scary, because I'm kickstarting in a week, Gunit.gg, is a 2 to 4 player real-time co-op.
You should just start in with Gun It is, and not that anybody should know, and say just Gun It is. I mean, I could do like a kind of, right, okay, I'll do this, right, watch this, okay? You and your crew thought it would be an easy job. Now the Inertia Corporation's hot in your tail, and they'll do anything to tie up loose ends. There you go.
That was beautiful. Can I steal that recording and like?
Oh yeah, I mean I'll do it professionally for you. It'll be
okay.
It'll be £3.50.
Done. So I mean this is like a game that I've wanted to make for like a decade.
All right.
Because really the inspiration for it was Ronin and the idea of Heat, the movie Ronin.
Oh.
If you know,
Yeah.
it's the De Niro and Sean Bean and all that. I love that movie. And there was just like a moment. And, you know, add Tarantino into this, add Heat, add, you know, Michael Mann movies and Bullet and French Connection. But I just love the idea of being in the backseat of a car in the middle of a firefight, right? Like there's something that was like a moment that I wanted to capture. And that was the inspiration, because working on video games, you know, you're making a thing on a screen, and working on Tabletop, like when I was escaping like the screen to work on like a couple ideas, I thought, man, sitting around a table and saying, "Give me the shotgun," right? Like that was the inspiration. Was just like someone saying, "Give me the shotgun," and like wanting to figure out how I could capture that. And I went through, like, my first idea was basically Machi Koro, and then I played Machi Koro. I'm like, oh, they already have, like, it was a completely different game. It didn't make any sense. And then, you know, I had a couple other random ideas. You know, it's like, because if we come back to, like, way at the start, you know, of the conversation about, like, where a board game is and the process of designing a board game, you could decide 50% of the way through that I want this to be dice instead of cards, right? Or I want this to be a board where there wasn't a board, or I want to get rid of the board. And you can do that in a board game in a way that is much more difficult in a video game, because you build on a foundation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So that the inspiration really was just simply, I want to sit in a car, imagining I'm in this car with other people, and I'm like getting handed or handing someone else the shotgun. And so that's the idea of this game, is you are surrounded by a bunch of other vehicles. They all have health and damage. You, as a group of 2 to 4 players, each have a turn order, a direction, forward, back, left, and right, and then an equipment, which is either like the steering wheel, the shotgun, a pistol, or an Uzi. And you're just exchanging those cards amongst each other. And at the end of 2 minutes, whatever you're holding is what you're going to do. So you say, okay, who's got the 1? You have the 1, you're holding the pistol, and you're pointing it backward. But this is bad because you're pointing it backward, but you're sitting in the front seat. So you're making a risky shot because there's someone between you and the
that's
pointing back.
That's clever.
And so then you're just and you're surrounded by the Inertia Corporation, and there are like motorcycles, cars, and trucks, and they have like 1, 2, and 3 health apiece. But then they also have these arrows, and those arrows are collateral damage. So when a vehicle is wrecked, it will then cascade in 0 to 4 other directions, and that could be back at you. And so the whole thing is like,
oh, right, okay.
yeah. And so then you have a steering wheel that allows yourself to move your crew one space in any direction. So do you do that at the start to get into a spot where you can shoot something, or do you do that at the end? Do you do it like in the middle to do something, And so that's the entirety of it, is just there's 12 core cards. You have these like your tile, and then you're surrounded by 9 or more tiles, and you just have 2 minutes to just like exchange your plans.
I like the idea of having a kind of a fixed kind of space, and it's almost, there's a huge kind of puzzle element to this, because you look at the cards and you have like a grid. I can see it. You got a grid of 9 cards, but the card on the left of the central card has got an arrow facing to the right, but it's got a heart value of 1, which means because it's got a life value of 1, if I then decided that I was going to shoot to the left, then what would happen is, yes, I would probably destroy that motorbike, but the fact is it's then going to cascade back on me, so it's going to attack the car. So what I actually want to do instead is I want to steer to the left first of all and change places with the motorbike, and then attack the motorbike, because if I attack the motorbike that's got 1 heart on my right hand side instead of...
Will you push them?
Yeah, instead of cascading me...
Yeah.
It's going to cascade into the other motorcycle on the other side, which has also got 1 heart, but that motorcycle's got an arrow that faces down the way into the big, huge truck that's on the bottom right-hand kind of corner. And if, depending on how we'd done on previous rounds, if that one had a bit of damage, that would potentially cause damage to everything around it, kind of simulating the fact, if you blow this up, this is going to create kind of devastation kind of everywhere. So is the entire game, how long does it take to play the entire game? Is it like a 15-20 minute, or can you make it kind of last longer or shorter than that?
Most of the time we play like 15 to 25 minute rounds. So there's a ton of things in the box, which is like, it's like, once you draw the tank tile, like, you're going to face off against the tank. You can't just put a tank in the box, right? You've got to put some other things.
Yeah.
So there's like, here now, again, this is an audio format. I'm showing Richard
for the tape.
So there's a bunch of different like different types of enemies. There's a bunch of different so there's the basic enemies, then there's the basic equipment, but then on top of that, the actual thing that really gives it flavor is there's a bunch of moment cards. And so these will be something like, we're on the news, here's 2 extra rules, and it'll say the crew earns 1 XP for all wrecks not in a pileup, or they can earn double XP for all pileups. So it'll be something like, it'll be something like that, or it'll be something like, you either must not talk this round, or you must put all your cards face down.
Wow.
And you can't look at them. And so it's just like, so the idea is just like really playing kind of the party game phase of this, like how do we make this unpredictable? How do we, each round, but then there's also settings cards that change the rules of the world. And then the actual goal is there's 7 different scenarios. And the scenarios are inspired by essentially... it's almost like a fictional kind of like James Bond-esque franchise.
Oh, right, okay.
So I found this is the only art that's not me is I did everything for this game, but I found a scenario artist, Ambrose Park, who's great. And basically it's like, let's make like the rediscovered 70s action movie, right? But it's re-released on DVD. Here's the like 50s pulp novel.
Yeah.
Here's the 2011 gritty reboot. So these all are different scenarios, and they give you different goals. They give you different like stories. And you can string them together if you would like. Most of the time we play like 1 or 2 rounds. But if you're having a good run, you could always like, you can string them together and say, can we play 3 of these?
Was it easier then to come up with more ideas because it was quite simply just writing some text on a card then? Were you able to experiment and see how things kind of worked an awful lot easier, and was it easier to kind of introduce and make changes, as you said?
Yes, in all regards except I think actually playtesting. Right. I did almost no online playtesting with this. This has been almost an entirely like I take it to places and I play with people. I'm not really a fan of Tabletop Simulator or like Tabletopia, particularly after Roll-in-One when it was the middle of the pandemic. I got kind of burned out. I was like, no, if I'm playing a board game, I want to be in the same space. So the biggest thing is just I'm making a multiplayer game, which means I need to have people with me. And so that was the biggest thing. But all the different the different frameworks for these different scenarios are really just because a lot of people during playtests had great ideas. It's like, oh, someone would say, I want to make the biggest combo.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, well, that's not kind of the core mechanic, but maybe there's a way we
well, it's
can,
the Blues Brothers, isn't it? The ends
exactly.
with all the police cars just ending up in a kind of a massive pile. You've got different kind of applications for that, and you get the likes of, things like Baby Driver and stuff like that. That's more modern, but that's a firm favourite. But Chinatown, French Connection.
There's a lot of
anything like that.
Mad Max.
Mad Max. There is a Mad Max version right there, kind of thing. There is absolutely a Mad Max version. So, in terms of then pricing, have you decided on how much the unit's going to be? Because you can understand, I speak to people all the time who are like, well, I'm launching my Kickstarter kind of next week, but we still haven't decided what the actual price of a unit is.
I made the call on that. It's going to be $30.
Cool.
Which is funny because I think the expected price of games now is higher, and I think I could charge more. But also, I want this to be sold in stores, and so another feature that people can't see is I'm a big fan of respecting your space.
Yes.
I am not a big fan of large boxes. If my game takes, this much space, that's nice. All I want it to take. But the flip side of that, which is one of the factors, is that when you put this on a shelf and you say, you can't say $50, right? No one is going to touch $50.
Yeah. That's going to be a difficult operation. However, if you were in Barnes and Noble, or over here you got Waterstones. If I walk into Waterstones nowadays, there's an entire kind of shelf. There is, obviously they've got all the books that they sell, but they have a specific shelves which have got like a ton of kind of smaller kind of box games, your kind of Go-Go Sushi, and there's Alley Cat games. I've got a few games, Tinder Blocks and Kitten and stuff like that, Phantom Inc. and stuff like that. And you see all these kind of even Throw Burrito, which isn't the biggest box in the world, but you see that on there. But then if you saw a box like that, and it would be like, it's kind of like $30 to me says this is worthwhile picking the box up and having a look at the back because you want to know why it's $30. Whereas $50 you're like, what is, they got a gold car kind of inside it, Has it got a set? You open it up and there's an actual set of car keys in there.
Right. Well, and Roll-in-One should have been $35 to $40 because of the actual manufacturing cost. Right. That was again, small boxes, relatively compact boxes, not tiny but compact. To me, it's just. I also love the box design. Right. It's very fun to figure out what you can fit in a box.
So, but with the set, this isn't your first rodeo. Oh, you could have horses. Oh, you could have John Wick on a horse. Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness, there you go.
Oh man,
there you go.
So,
there's a scenario.
Yeah. So, well, I'm really excited by the expansion that's going to be like. So, again, all this math, right? So with Roll-in-One, it was $8 for the expansion, which is 10 cards.
Wow.
But like it was a Kickstarter exclusive.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, like one of the things that I got from Andrew was, you know, like exclusives are meaningful, right? Like people, when they're on Kickstarter, are seeing an exclusive and they're kind of like, yes, I will pay you $8 more if it doesn't cost me any more, like for shipping or anything like that. 2/3 of my backers went for that, right? And it blew me away that like 2/3 of backers went for it. And I love those pieces, right? To me, they are like essential to the game. They're not essential to the game, but they're like, they're meaningful. But I kind of wasn't prepared for that. It's like, it's a really interesting ecosystem, right? It's like all of these different places we sell and buy and play, and like all these things kind of impact what you should or shouldn't do to optimize for it. And what I've ultimately settled on was, for my own sanity, is one base game, one expansion, and then like a higher tier where you get your name on the box. And the high tier getting your name on the box is honestly for friends and family who want to support me more than most people, right? It's like, you know, it's like my sister is happy to give me double the price of this game because she wants it to succeed.
Yeah.
And so I put like the credits on the box, and then I was amazed that they sold out pretty quick. And I was like, I put 40 credits on the box, and they all sold out. And there were even a handful of people I didn't know that like paid for that. And I was like, that's amazing. So this time I'm like doubling the credits. And then I will add so that's going to be same as Roll-in One.
Yeah.
It's just like, I really like the simplicity of just the game plus the expansion, game plus expansion, and your name on the box. And then this time I'm adding the retailer tier, which is like is going to be logistically more challenging, because one of the big things with a retailer is you need to like confirm that they're actually retailers. Because generally because coming back to costs, when I don't know how much you're familiar or aware of this, right? But like often a retailer buys at 50% discount.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Called keystone pricing, right? And that's just like a default. And if you're a more indie thing like me, I can give them I'll keep slightly more money. Like they'll still buy it for like 45% off versus 50% off, but it's a little, you know, it's like, because they understand I'm a little bit more niche and I'm a little bit smaller of a, you know, but if someone's buying it for 50% off, you really want to be sure it's a shop.
Exactly,
right?
not just somebody that's like banded together and bought themselves a domain name, like kind of like last week, basically.
So I am adding that logistics hurdle, but I do think it's going to be worth, you know, like trying to get a few more stores on board.
What about pledge managers? Because in the conversations I have with a lot of crowdfunding people nowadays is that, and it's one of the reasons I think why GameFound has become a thing, is that it started off as a pledge manager and then eventually went, okay, we're a board gaming kind of crowdfunding kind of platform.
Yeah.
But there seems to be a case that companies that now fund then go to a pledge manager and then kind of keep the pledge manager open for like 6 months while it's kind of getting manufactured to hopefully, I mean, is that something you've considered yourself?
I should have considered it slightly more than I did, but there's probably like 2 or 3 reasons. One of them is, Kickstarter is going to take a cut of my shipping costs, right? So if I'm charging you $12 for shipping, Kickstarter is taking a cut of that. These pledge managers will generally, you can get maybe a better cut out of that, right? Like you pay the shipping later, and it's, you know, BackerKit is taking like 5% instead of 8%. And that adds up, right? If you have 1,000, you know, backers who are each paying you like $10 to $20 in shipping, it definitely adds up. That's the biggest reason I kind of wish I had done more investment in it. The second reason, well, actually, no, there's two more reasons. One is just Kickstarter was always a bit of a mess to handle a bunch of different types of pledges.
Yes.
And because that results in different like SKUs, right? So you not only have the manufacturer has to manage things, the final warehouse has to manage things. It's like you have to choose how these things are boxed and all that stuff. I'm kind of ignoring that problem, as I talked about a couple minutes ago. I just don't want to deal with a ton of SKUs. I want the base game and a fancy version.
Yeah.
And that's it. And so that is a reason to go with those other things. And the last reason is just what you mentioned, which is selling it, right? Like continuing to sell it after the Kickstarter is a totally legit like desire, which would say like, oh, in 2 to 3 months, my Kickstarter may be over, but I haven't actually like given them the final order.
Yeah.
And if there's like 2 or 3 more months, Kickstarter is a big point of visibility. If there's 2 or 3 months where people know but can't buy my game, that's money on the floor. Right?
Yeah, it is,
that's money.
It's kicking your own ass for no kind of reason.
Yeah, and I ultimately didn't do it just because I didn't want to like. I'd rather have fewer factors at every point, even though I am like losing stuff.
I do get, I mean, when it comes to kind of interview stuff and things like that, when I'm arranging interviews with people now, sometimes people are like, well, yeah, the main campaign, we're funded, so it kind of doesn't matter if I talk to you now or if I talk to you 3 months or 2 months down the line, because the pledge manager is going to be open for another 3 or 4 months. So if we have a chat and a conversation, I'll have maybe a know of where I am with things. I can talk about the manufacturing and stuff like that. And then I can then say to people, oh, if you think you've missed out, you haven't missed out, you can kind of jump on. So it's kind of, again, it's almost like there's Kickstarter used to be, I have an idea. Here's some drawings I made. I'd like you to help me fund it into a game. And it's now become, you've got to do the pre-marketing run-up. You've got to have prototypes made. You've then got to do your whole marketing campaign. You then run the campaign. You then get it fulfilled. You give the manufacturing the nod, but you don't necessarily give the manufacturing the nod right away because you're now running a post kind of crowdfunding campaign. And I can see that. I can see for some it's becoming like a business model, because obviously it's a nice, depending on what kind of pledge manager, crowdfunding manager you use. I think some of them have you taking the payment straight away, and others kind of they have a cut-off date where the payment comes out at a certain date, so it can have kind of, it allows you to, with a visibility, to say, right, well, we can plan for this because we know that in 3 months' time there's another $3,000 or there's another $500 or there's $250 going to be hitting the account, which means I can plan for that. So it's kind of very, 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 very interesting. In terms of how are you feeling about the kind of the campaign? Are you looking forward to it? Are you, what's your thoughts at the moment?
I wish more people knew about me.
Okay.
But other than that, or knew about my game. Other than that, I'm feeling good. Like the shipping has been a little bit trickier than last time. I'm still I think I have too many different shipping options, and so I'm really trying to like choose what's going to be the most reasonable. There are like cheaper shippers who are less connected to the games industry. Yeah. So it's like more just like e-commerce shipping and logistics companies that might be a little cheaper, but there's some question, like I'm in the midst of kind of finalizing that. Obviously that doesn't matter at all until, months from now. But I would like slightly more certainty on kind of what the shipping rates are going to be. Other than that, I mean, I've been showing the game. Like I'm actually going to be at Dice Tower, like starting tomorrow. Okay. Dice Tower West. I'm going to their convention.
Mr. Drop-in Names. I'm going to be hanging about with Tom Vassell, and
Oh well, he may or may not play the game. I'm going to their convention, and I hope I will get to run into him and show him the game. But I'm going to be there promoting it. I have like a demo table, so I'm hoping to show it. And yeah, I mean, I feel good about the game. People like the game when they play it. It's a unique. I'd like to think it's a pretty unique game, and I think it's pretty fun. And I'm terrified because Kickstarters are crazy. So.
And it's like shouting, but you're trying to make sure you're above the noise, which is always a tricky thing. However, if people are interested in what noises you have to make, where can they find you on the internet webs? Where do you exist?
I'll just be revving my engine, just making sounds. That's just be off in my corner doing that. You can find me. You can find my website is randyo.net. Mm-hmm. That's my. You can go directly to the game website by going to gunit.gg. That should take you to that, and that will relink to the Kickstarter. I'll just redirect it to the Kickstarter once it launches. And then once the Kickstarter is done, it will redirect back to a site where you can hopefully buy it, in a few months from now. Those are like, I don't use Twitter anymore, right?
I mean, I don't think anyone. I don't know. I had this kind of like, I don't. Yeah, it's just I go on. If I go on there, it's to go. Yeah.
I have a personal Substack that I kind of started that I call it RandyO Mails. It's most people probably won't care about it, but it's here's what I'm up to every 3 months.
We will put the links in the show notes so that we have got notes to show as always. And if you want to,
and if you're ever interested in hearing about game design, I will talk anyone's ear off about game design. So I love talking about it.
We should do another show about game design. We almost did.
Yeah.
We were kind of doing a show about game. We were talking about industry stuff, and then we had to bring those, and we would have got away with it if it hadn't been for that pesky cardboard. If you want to keep an eye on what we're up to, then just go to the internet webs, and if you want to read words that we have written in a format that you can read them, you go to we'renotwizards.co.uk. If you want to listen to words that we have spoken, go to we'renotwizards.com, or check out your podcast catcher of choice. That's Apple and Spotify, and I don't know what they're called, Licky End and Scrummage and Doodop, or my current podcast catcher, Podcast Addict, apparently, is like everybody loves a bit of Podcast Addict. And if you have loved the show, which you should, put a lot of work into this, then give us a rating or review. If you are going to be giving us a rating or review, don't give us 10 stars because it makes us big-headed, but don't give us 1 star because it makes us cry. Give us something in the middle, like a 5, because it's average, and we're just that little bit average. But the person who's not been average is rather wonderful, rather fantastic. He's the hole-in-one. He's revving his engine. He's taking no prisoners. It's Randy O'Connor. Thank you very, very much for coming on, sir.
Been a pleasure.
There's only 2 more things to do as normal. I'm getting old. I'm too old to see. You can't teach an old dog new tricks, and you can't teach me to do any other sign-off. So it's only 2 more things to do. The first thing is to remember that we're many things, but we're not wizards. Are we wizards, Randy?
I'm not a wizard.
Yes, of course you're not. Of course he's not. And the other thing is to say goodbye. So it's a goodbye from the rather wonderful, rather fantastic Randy O'Connor. Say goodbye, Randy.
Goodbye.
And it's a goodbye from me. Remember, stay safe for all 6s. Make something awful and look to the left of you. That motorcycle's been following a bit too close. Maybe you should reach into the back seat, get something, and do something about it. Maybe you could floor it, but maybe this time you should gun it. Until the next time, goodbye.
A wizard is never late. Nor is he early. He arrives precisely when he means to.